The article Wounded or Wise, written by Goswami, psychologist and best-selling author. Let us listen the content.
It also applies to our work as writers. In this article, we'll explore what it means to be wounded or wise and how we can use these traits to succeed at our craft. Wounded or wise. Wounds are a part of life. They may be painful, but they can also be healed. When you are wounded, you have wounds to heal and wisdom to gain from them. The more wounds we have in our lives, the greater our potential for wisdom becomes as well. We learn from the experience. I never knew a silly thing that if you touch nicked electrical wire with an iron rod it will give me currently. I never touched the point after it happened in my childhood. By the way, thanks to the scientist or the person who invented the insulator. Which type of person are you? You can't avoid the fact that there are many different ways to answer this question. We each have our way of looking at and understanding the world, so it's important to recognize that your answer might be unique from someone else's. In addition, there is no single absolute definition of wounded or wise, but rather two broad categories. Wounded people believe they need others' approval for them to feel worthwhile. Wise people realize how much value they possess on their own without needing another person's validation or approval. So, what does this all mean? How do we find out which side of these two poles we stand on? The only way I know how is through observation, by seeing how our actions affect other people around us, whether those actions come from wounds or wisdom. Are you wounded? A wound is a cut, scrape, or abrasion. Wisdom is the knowledge that comes from this experience and its recognition as an opportunity for growth. So, how do you turn your wound into wisdom? You can't unless it's wisdom itself that lets you know what needs to be done, but even then, it's not always easy. You see, when someone has been wounded by something, or someone, in their past life, they may have trouble recognizing their wounds because they've never learned how to heal them before now. They may even think that if someone else knew about these wounds then all would be well, but no. That person who has been wounded doesn't want anyone else to know about their pain because then she wouldn't feel so alone anymore. Wound can be blessing. Wounds can be a blessing, and they can also be a great source of strength. They can also teach us how to connect with others in ways we hadn't before. For example, I was recently on a trip with my brother-in-law and his family in India. He's always been very open about his life experience, but one day he began talking about his daughter's birth defect, which made her legs appear deformed when she walked or crawled around the house at an early age. She was 3. It turns out that this happened because she had been born prematurely after having twins, one who just didn't survive either time, so now there are no siblings left alive but me. This story shows how wounds need not define us as they did him, but instead can become something positive if we choose them well enough during our lives here on earth. The wound may turn to be a great strength. A wound is a time when you have been hurt. It's also a place where growth and transformation take place, as you learn from your experiences and decide what to do next. A wound can be positive or negative, depending on how it's handled by the person who has been wounded or those around them. It may cause self-doubt or feelings of hopelessness, however, it may also bring about new perspectives on life, relationships, and growth opportunities. The key is not to ignore or repress the experience, to acknowledge what happened so that healing can begin. The arc of a life. The arc of your life is the path that you take. It's not just what happens to you, but how you respond to it. You can learn from experience and grow into wiser people as a result of your choices. Here are 2 examples of how to turn wounds into wisdom. 1. A woman was being harassed on the street by an older man. She told him that if he didn't stop, she'd call the police. He continued to harass her and she called the police again. The second time he saw this, he went home and cried because he realized that no one wants to hear about how much they've hurt someone else's feelings or done something wrong when it comes down to it, just as much as they don't want anyone's help with anything else. He decided then and there that if anyone ever used their power over others again, which is what happened, then he would act like a victim instead of using his power against them. This started with just one person but now has spread throughout many cities across America where men are starting new businesses based on their terms rather than following guidelines set by society at large. 2. The second example involved someone who had been diagnosed with cancer at age 20 years old and decided not only should she live longer but also try harder until death came knocking at her door because they weren't ready yet. It took courage just getting through life day after day knowing how short everyone else's lives seemed compared with ours. However, now we know better, so let us live longer while still enjoying every minute possible too. What about you? What is the most painful thing that has happened to you? How did you respond to it? How did it change your life, if at all? What does this teach us about ourselves and our relationships with others, our surroundings, or even just ourselves in general? Turn your wounds into wisdom. Wisdom is a beautiful thing, and it can be easily lost. We all have wisdom that we've accumulated over our lifetime, but what do you do when you come across new information that contradicts the way you thought things worked? How do you know whether it's wise or foolish to act on this information? Wisdom comes from experience. The more life experiences that are added to your wallet of knowledge, the wiser and more experienced person you become. And while there's no guarantee that every single experience will make us wiser people, and sometimes they don't, there are plenty of other ways in which wisdom can be acquired, through reading books, listening to podcasts, watching movies, traveling somewhere far away from home. You get my point. The key here is not about having more facts about some topic at hand, but rather about being able to think critically about those facts so as not only to gain insights into what truly matters, but also to become aware of how much power lies within each person themselves, i.e., their perspective. Conclusion. The next time you feel wounded, don't run to your wounds. Instead, take a moment to discover the wisdom in them. Look at the wounded part of your life and ask yourself what it means. Then ask yourself what you can learn from that experience.